Thanks for joining me. I'm Joe Carbonetta, and this is Arroyo Live. This program is produced by and through the facilities of Pasadena Media. Created to help inform and restore a sense of connection for those feeling isolated by the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the continued hope of this program to help bring together and strengthen our community through informative and meaningful conversation. This program is live if you are watching on Tuesday, August 18th, and you can share your comments or questions with us in real time or anytime at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org. Tonight's program is a special episode, as this year marks the 100th anniversary of our nation's 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. Tonight, we talk about that anniversary. For our discussion tonight, I'm joined by Miss Jan Sanders, former director of Pasadena Public Libraries, now retired, and Miss Martha Zavala, president of the League of Women Voters. Ladies, thank you both for joining me this evening. I'd like to ask each of you to please take a moment to tell our viewers a little bit more about yourselves. And Jan, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to begin with you.
Sure. I'm delighted to be here. I know most of your audience people will recognize me. I've done a lot of things for this particular station. And as you said, I was the public library director here in Pasadena for 12 years before I retired. So I'm pretty well known in the community. I'm delighted to be here to talk about the women's right to vote. Actually, it was 100 years ago today that we got Tennessee to sign, which put it into law. It only worked for white women, by the way, but that's a whole different program. So we're excited to be here and encourage women, particularly encourage women to vote in this election. It's going to be a really mighty endeavor for all of us. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Pleasure to have you here this evening. Thank you again. And Martha, if you wouldn't mind.
Greetings, everybody. Good evening. My name is Martha Zavala from the League of Women Voters, Pasadena area. It encompasses 13 communities, including Pasadena. And I'm really delighted to be here to talk about 100 years after that momentous day, which of course was today when Tennessee was the last state to help ratify the 19th Amendment. So it was signed into law actually on August 26th, but today is the day when it became possible, when a young man paid attention to what his mother told him and told him to vote in favor. He was predisposed not to vote for it until his mother asked him to go ahead and do it. And I think that's the story of suffrage, where it's been a fight together of men and women with a lot of hiccups, but it was accomplished as a coalition. And I think that's what one of the significant parts is of today.
Well, again, Martha, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here as well. You started to touch on my first question this evening, was perhaps you could speak a little bit, both of you, about the history of the women's suffrage movement and all that came before it and since it.
Well, 100 years seems like a long time, and yet it's taken 100 years for us to get where we are today, and we're not even at the finish line yet. So it began, as most of you know, with a small movement in upstate New York. And we learned a lot about that movement and about how the whole effort began with when we had the Rose Bowl parade last year. You'll remember that there was a float there dedicated to the idea of women's suffrage, and we had all kinds of people on the float who had a part to play in the action that's gone on already. We had women marching from each of the states that ratified this particular change to the Constitution. So it's been, as Martha said, a continuous coalition of coming together, trying something, seeing if it works, trying something else, pulling out all the stops, talking to all the people we can. Yes, coming in as mothers and wives and saying, yes, Senator so-and-so, you will vote for this. You're my son, and I'm telling you, you need to do this. And why? Because I said so. That's a famous line from mothers, because I said so. But we'll talk a little later about the impact that the whole movement has had through, through the 100 years, because it's not as if we just signed on the dotted line and immediately everything became equal and fair and open for women, because we all know that that's not true. But we'll get into that in just a minute.
I think
Martha?
you can, yes. I think one of the things that strikes me is that struggle that was started through the temperance movement, women's movement. I mean, this was one of the things that was an abolition movement, where the coalition came together with everyone seeking to have equity, social equity. And today, we're still in that fight. That fight hasn't been won yet. It's all in the little pieces. If you take a look at all of the things that the League advocates for, they all have to do with community, and they have to do with family. Those are the kinds of values that we put into our political action. We're very active. When you take a look at our partners, they're from everywhere. But forces seem to want to pit our causes against each other. And it's like the overall atmosphere is almost designed to have you take sides. I'm sure you've heard of the term intersectionality, is you have to choose whether you're a woman or you're Black or you're Hispanic, in my case, or, all of these things, or if you're an immigrant or we're all from immigrant stock, but, was it just yesterday or was it 100 years ago, and things like that. And those forces that try to get us to look at our differences instead of our commonalities. And I think that's what happened 100 years ago. That's what's happening now. And so
Exactly.
That's when I see all of the marches and all of the people taking sides. People are scared right now with COVID, with the economy, the way it is. It's just built for people to try to scramble to maintain their position in the community. And that always makes for bad business. And trying to step aside and just think of how we could move faster together, it's really difficult for people to do.
Right. Jan, you mentioned in your opening remarks that when the suffrage movement was first passed, it really only applied to white women. Certainly, that much has changed today. But in terms of the demographics of female voters, do we still see the vast majority of female voters being white people, or are more minorities participating? Is that still a big issue?
I don't have any numbers in front of me to answer that question intelligently. I can tell you what I have heard and what my experience has been, which is that when women vote, things get done. And so the League, which was formed as an offshoot of the suffragist movement, of course, we're as old as the movement is itself. We've always tried to get women into positions of power, at least at the table for the conversation. Are more women voting? Yes, I think they are. We know that the current campaign is working on those suburban soccer moms. That seems to be a whole group unto itself now. We know that ethnicity plays a part. It took until the 1960s for Black women to get the vote as fully as they needed to. So I think that each time we see a woman step into power, whether that's a city office, a city commission, a state office, a state attorney general, a state senator, a national vice president, when we see women stepping into these roles, then all the little girls who come after see that as viable, see that as something that they can do. Who knew that women could go into space? When I was coming up, you were a teacher or a nurse or a secretary. That's really pretty limiting. So I think that in the sense that the more women participate, the more we can have women participate. That's really the adage that we need to work on. The more we do, the more we can do, and the more we will do. And so we're encouraging people, women particularly, to register, to vote, to participate, to learn the issues, know what they're talking about, become informed, and do their part to keep this whole democratic idea alive and well.
Exactly. We have a saying in the league that democracy is not a spectator sport. You know, it's a contact sport, and you have to get out there and stay involved. All the gains that you make, the only way you keep them is by pressing for them and continue to exercise them. So I think that's one of the messages for sure for today on this historic day, is to make sure that all women continue that fight and may have to continue it for the rest of their lives and pass that down to their children and their grandchildren and so on, because people being what they are, you must continue to hold on to the power that we have, which is that vote.
You know, one thing that women do, I think, pretty effectively is to cooperate and come together and reach consensus and sort of move along in those ways rather than just sort of digging in their feet. I was very active. Most of your viewers know this. I was very active when I was in the library profession on a national level, working with legislators and those kinds of things. And we always had a saying, which I think is valid, which is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, which is to say we need the coalition that helps us get this issue through. And right now we need the coalition that helps us protect the way of life that we have come to expect in this country. So if women are good at hearing those things and making those kinds of alliances, I say, let us at it.
All right. Well, you both have echoed the sentiment that there is much more that needs to be done since the amendment passed 100 years ago. I was wondering if each of you would take a moment or two to speak on some of the obstacles and challenges that women voting today are facing. What is some of that work that is left undone?
You want to start, Martha?
Sure. In terms of work left undone, if you're talking about voting, until recently, of course, we're in California, so some things are made easier here, but that's not universally exercised across the US. People who work 1, 2 long shifts, women who have children to take care of, things like that, is access to the actual vote, the time to be able to go ahead and take time off, and then to be called and asked to stand in long lines, things related to childcare. I'm talking about equity for women. You may have the vote, but structurally, we're carrying baggage that we created over 400 years in the United States, and a lot of it is just still there in our systems. So there's not adequate childcare. There's a lot of things. So in terms of social equity, a lot of work to be done. In terms of trying to get and make it easier for women to vote, I think is expansion of the hours, the days when you can go vote, voting by mail, things like that. And so whether things may be really great in Los Angeles County because they are all about expanding access to the vote, that's not true for other communities, other states at all. So in terms of having equity on the voting playing field, it doesn't exist, and so those are still fights that we have to have.
Well, something I've been watching is I've been watching not only our local league, but leagues throughout the country as they step up to encourage and instruct women on what it means to be politically active. How do you get into it? If you're interested in politics, you don't just stand up one day and say, oh, I think I'll run for vice president. You start with your city, you start with smaller roles. So there's a lot of instruction that's been going on in terms of teaching women particularly how to become politically active and politically viable, because it's hard to get in that smoke-filled room. Maybe you don't even want to get in there, I don't know, but it's hard to break down some of those barriers sometimes. So as one of us learns and we teach another, and we teach the next one, and then we teach the next one, I think that's the way that we have to do it. We have a record number of women in the Congress now, in both houses of the Congress. And that, I think it's a record number. Don't quote me on that, I might be wrong. But at any rate, we have a number of women in those positions. And that is terrific, because that changes the tone of things, and it brings issues to bear that had been sort of swept under the carpet for a number of years. So those things are important, and those things are good. And so when we talk about the impact that the vote has, it's very high and it's very important. But the greater impact is, how do we become a player? How do we get women to be the players, not just the voters? And that, I think, is one of our larger challenges.
All right.
Does that make sense to you, Joe?
Certainly it does. Political analysts have cited numerous reasons, possible advantages for presidential hopeful Joe Biden to select a woman as his vice presidential running mate. Certainly, there is the perception that he would like to appeal to female voters. Obviously, there's the perception that he wants to appeal to the Black voting population. But how historically significant is this? And does it really make a difference in terms of women voters to have a woman as a vice presidential candidate?
I think Jan touched on it quite well. And we all have role models, and to see someone so visible and in such a high position, and being able to take charge or command of so much responsibility, I think is really very telling. They talk about the 2018 election and how many women were put into Congress during that election. And, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we had a real viable female candidate for president during the 2016 election. The other thing could have also been that here we ended up with a president that really had no government experience. So you sit back and you think, what, I have something to contribute. And so why not run? And I think there was also this idea, the Me Too movement sort of driving it, because saying, I'm not going to take a back seat to someone else. I'm going to go ahead and move ahead on the merits, and I'm going to make a place for myself. And I think that started this process of people considering, women specifically considering themselves, I can do that. And as Jan mentioned, doing it locally, being part of commissions. For example, right now, the LA County is trying to establish its redistricting commission, and it's throwing the net out wide. So at the end of this month, women really are able to apply to be on that commission to do the redistricting of the county, the supervisorial districts. That's an opportunity right there that people can take. So I think just being aware of them, that there are opportunities, and that yes, you too can contribute at that level.
That's a terrific opportunity for people, because that's a very powerful commission, the way the districts are called, has all kinds of impact and all kinds of impact, I guess is the word that I want. What I was going to say too is that when you look at the women who have been in the news this past year, the women whose names have come up as possible considerations for Biden as he named his running mate, that was a huge field. It was a huge field of women. Some busy, some very powerful locally, some in their states, some governors, some at the national level. When you look at a field like that, then you can begin to really get to the fact that women are in there and they are making a difference. I think that was sort of unheard of and unexpected as few as 10 years ago. And now here we are. So good on us. Let's keep teaching those young girls and let's keep those gates open.
What would you say to young first-time voters of the female voting population about the significance of this upcoming election?
Well, I would maybe iterate something that was said at the convention last night, which is, if you look statistically at some of the recent races, some of the elections went by as few as 2 votes per precinct. If you think your vote doesn't count, and you look at things like that, where 2 votes per precinct makes such a difference, because it's like the old story about, for one of a shoe, the horse was lost and the war was lost. For lack of those 2 votes, the precincts were lost. The electoral college went in a different way, and thus starts the tale. So I think it's just important for people to realize that your vote does count. It is important. And above that, it's a responsibility. It's a big responsibility to vote, to get out there and make your issues known, make yourself literate in the issues that are important to you. None of us can know all there is to know about all the things that are on the political field. Oh my gosh, you go absolutely berserk. But if you're a climate change person, study that, learn about that. There are all kinds of local groups who are working on that. If you're concerned about rent control, learn about that. You're concerned about education, let's take a look at that. So become aware of the issues, the questions that keep you up at night.
Exactly.
And as you learn about those, then you can realize that you do have a voice. You do have something to say, and people will in fact listen to you if you have your facts straight and you know what you're talking about and you present it in a reasonable and logical way. I don't know how much conversation you've had with some of our local representatives, but I can tell you, when I talk to Hardin or Holden or Portantino or any of them, they're eager to hear what the constituents have to say. So take advantage of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we visit the schools and we talk to the students, one of the things we do for sure is we look at the video clips of youth being active. So for example, the Parkland group, we let them listen to other students really being active and actually making a change. There was a young lady out of Maine who actually changed the state law for the age for marrying, for example, because you could have consensual sex at one age, but you couldn't get married until another, or it was very ridiculous. And she decided to take that up and actually caused state law to be changed. So those are some of the things we show them. And then we also talk sometimes, I mean, it's not all the same discussion, but there is an African proverb that says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try going to sleep in a room with a mosquito. And basically, you know, if you can imagine, it forces you to do something, if simply to put the covers over your head or to swat it or get up and turn on the light, or as I do, is I force my husband to get up and try to attack this mosquito, but it forces you to action. And so we tell them, don't get swatted, but be a mosquito. If you care about something, as Jan said, know your stuff. Show your passion and don't be afraid to speak up. So those are the things, you know, that can be inspiring. And letting them know that, you know, in the 2018, an election with more than 23,000 voters in the state of Virginia was decided by the flip of a coin. That's how it could be. All you needed is one more voter to show up, you know, and that's not as unheard of as people imagine.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
All right. Well, to our viewers at home, I would like to remind everyone that we are live for Tuesday, August 18th, and you can share your comments or questions with us in real time at Arroyo Live at PasadenaMedia.org. And if you send us a question or comment, we'll make sure to read it aloud here on the program and get an answer to you. All right. So moving on in our discussion, certainly there has been a lot of controversy recently about the gearing up for mail-in ballots at this election coming up in November. We've all heard discussions now about the current administration cutting funding to the post office and potentially using it as a bargaining chip to get other funding passed, some of which has to do with relief for the unemployed during the coronavirus pandemic. The administration has also embarked on a policy of discussing the potential for, or the increased potential for voter fraud as a result of all of these mail-in ballots. Does any of this seem eerily reminiscent of some of the bullying and intimidation tactics that were used during the original suffrage movement?
Of course, it absolutely is. Anything where those in power can hold their power close and prevent it being diluted by anyone or anything is going to be what they try to do. And so voter intimidation has long been in a lot of different politicians' toolkit. Not a good thing necessarily, but certainly out there. I think that, as Martha said early on, we're lucky because we're here in California and we've already got vote by mail and have for a long time. I used to live for a while, I lived in Washington State, and they're all vote by mail. They don't even have polling places there. So it's not as if this is a new phenomenon or a new idea or a particularly tricky thing to master. I think that yet is there room for error? Yes, of course. Is there room for error in regular walk-in stand-up voting? Yes, there is. You're dealing with human beings and you're dealing with lots and lots and lots of numbers. And every time you have that big effort, there's going to be a chance for error on one stage or another. So yes, I'm a little bit concerned about that, but not particularly, because I think that people who want to have their vote counted will see to it that happens. First Lady Obama last night said, you know, put on your sneakers, pack your lunch, go stand in line and get your vote in. I thought that was a very telling kind of comment.
And I think
Martha, I didn't mean to step over you.
That's okay. I think that's a good thing for conceivably other states. As you know, the state of California is going to automatically send all registered voters. As long as you're registered by October 19th, you're going to get a vote by mail ballot at home, so you can be safe when you vote. Now, in terms of it being secure, there are things that you can do to make sure that it is number one, if you physically are able to do it, make sure you sign your sealed envelope. You fill out your ballot and you seal it and make sure that you've signed it, because everybody has to sign when you vote. And even when you're doing it at home, a signature is required. And that you have so many options for actually returning your ballot. Number one, we've all talked about, or maybe are unaware, that in California, we still will have polling places open, which we call vote centers now. And you can go to any vote center and physically hand it in yourself. If you're going to have someone else drop it off for you, make sure that you have signed the authorization section on the envelope, authorizing a trusted person. And here's the key. You don't just hand it off to somebody who's knocked on your door and said, here, let me take it. Make sure you have a relationship with that person, a trusted relationship, and they say, fine, hand it over to your son, whoever it is that is stay at home with you, if you have somebody, or a close relative or a friend or someone like that. They can drop it off at the vote center. Numerous drop boxes are going to be available throughout. You don't even have to go to a vote center. So it looks like a mailbox, but the registrar recorder owns those boxes, and they actually will take them straight out of that box and take them back to headquarters. And the other thing, of course, is to mail it. And you will have, it has to be postmarked in order to be counted. It has to be postmarked November election day or before. And that's what you have to be sure for the first time. Normally it would, by law, those ballots had to be sent to the registrar recorder by the Friday following the Tuesday election. For this year, because of the issues, they are allowing 17 days, but it has to be postmarked by November 3rd. The other thing the registrar recorder is doing, they actually are meeting with the post office and have told them that they actually will pick those up from the post office and take them back to the registrar's office to have them counted. So in LA County, this is not going to be a concern. We, of course, the League of Women Voters, have concerns for the rest of the country. And so that's why we're still advocating that, even though the Postmaster General has indicated that he's going to stop as of today, to continue to put in these measures he's put in, we want them to be rolled back to restore the system as it was prior to his instilling these, what he felt were cost containment measures. And so hopefully everybody will write to Congress to urge them to pass the funding bill for the post office, just to ensure that the rest of the US gets, not only their ballots, but their drugs. Our veterans are at risk, and anybody who gets a Social Security check, all those delays. So, there's a lot to be said about that, but it is a secure system. And as long as you follow the precautions.
Yeah, I think if we can make it secure here in LA County, and we have the population of a small state already, then you can make it work pretty much anywhere. I think one of the large factors here is we're not going to have those returns on election night like we've been used to. I recognize that, as Martha said, you can mail in your ballot excuse me, up to 17 days early. So maybe those get counted early. I don't know. But at any rate, it's not going to be quite as instantaneous in terms of the polling returns.
Exactly. People have to expect that and not allow themselves, we have to move forward, trust in the system. Wasn't it President Reagan that says, trust but verify kind of thing? Because we will show you, if you come to our website, how you can sign up to actually track your ballot. So you sign in there and they will let you know how your ballot is flowing through the process and ultimately whether or not it's counted. So that's another measure that the state of California has paid for that service for every single registered voter in the state. So, you know, I think we do have a thing, and I just want to make a little correction. It is not, we are not the size of a small state. We would be the 8th largest state in the union if we were a state.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Thank you.
That's an important fact right there.
That is an important thing. That is an important thing.
Yeah, again, that I think speaks to the importance of everyone getting out and voting this year. That has the potential to make a very large impact on the final outcome for the November election.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of voter turnout, there have been statistics that suggest that prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, across the country and across all demographics, there had been as much as a 30% drop in voter turnout. How important is that in this upcoming election? And what can we expect a bigger drop or a big increase in voter turnout? And what's being done to encourage a larger voter turnout in this very important election?
Well, the League has always worked on voter information, voter education, and getting what we call get out the vote, GOTV. Now, one of the prime methods that we have had in the past, and Martha alluded to it earlier, is working with the schools, talking to students, getting those students registered. Because as you know, you can register to vote when you're 16. You can't vote until you're 18, but you can register early. So those kinds of things are now sort of out the window with lots of other pieces. And all of that really speaks to our responsibility as concerned, educated citizens to make sure that the people with whom we come in contact, socially responsible contact, the people we know, the people who have conversations with us, know just how important their vote is and are ready to make that happen. I saw the turnout when Obama was elected. Incredible amounts of people voting then. If we could capture that kind of zeal and that kind of ownership for what those voters saw as a responsible answer to where we were headed and what was going on, then I think that really is what will make the difference. We have to get people excited about what's happening and aware of what's happening, and just to let people know that failing to vote is in fact casting a vote. Because every time someone says, my vote doesn't matter, I'm not going to vote for either one, what happens is both fields become diluted. So I think that we really need to instill in people the importance of their vote, how important it is, how much it matters, and just the general responsibility that, yes, not only can you vote, but you should vote. You must vote. It's very important. Everyone is saying this must be the most important election of our lifetime. I don't know. Perhaps that's hyperbole. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Every election is important. I voted in every election, including city elections and everything in between, from the time I turned 21 to today. I never failed to vote, and I'll vote this time.
Yeah, I think that you're right, that it's so important for people to get out there, and how much it is that those that choose not to vote. The same Virginia election I talked about, the subsequent year, the subsequent election resulted in the loser. The two contestants went up together again. The ultimate loser of the coin toss won the subsequent election by less votes than they had lost it in the previous one. And the difference is that the opposition failed to show up to the ballot booth and resulted in a complete change. So arguably in 2016, that is what happened. It's the people who didn't vote that made the greatest impact on that election. And in terms of reaching people who we're not connected to, because that is a fact, in September, before LA County launched its new vote system, they had a mock election. And they did their best to put it out in the media, in radio, through different channels. Only approximately 6,000 people out of 5.5 million registered voters actually showed up and took advantage to try out those machines. They were asked, how did you find out about it? 60% said word of mouth. None of them had gotten it through all those media outreach. So what we're trying to do now is we're going to actually launch a postcard campaign to all those people who don't follow us, who apparently don't follow any political activity whatsoever. And so we are, even though we're going to step up our game on a media campaign, social media campaign, we're still going to do the old-fashioned trying to put posters. And this is where one of the areas where we would love to have help and have people contact us and say, you can put a poster where we can let people know that they can get voter information, how to register, all of these things in your windows, in your business windows, your restaurants, your anything, any place, even if you're boarded up, let us put a poster there so people can see it, so they can engage, because many of those people, the only technology they have access to is a cell phone, and they can do everything on that cell phone. They will not be precluded from registering, from tracking their ballot, from checking their registration, any number of things that they can do, and from participating in all the voter education activities that we're going to offer, like candidate forums and explaining the ballot measures, which we call pros and cons. So you can make up your own mind about how you're going to choose a particular yes or no on something. And so we're going to try different things, because we know we're not connected to those that are low income, from immigrant communities that don't have that history of voting. All of these communities need to be part of the solution, because they're the ones likely to suffer from the outcomes if they don't participate.
We saw a lot of protest marching, and we saw a lot of citizens in the streets really trying to have their voices heard. And one of the offshoots of that is I'm seeing and I'm hearing about a number of communities of faith who are taking it upon themselves to make sure that the people with whom they come in contact, their parishioners, their congregants, know that their vote is important, and they're assisting people in getting the information they need, getting their ballots sent in, all of that kind of thing. So I think that we're at a position where that social consciousness is now raising up a larger consciousness about participation in democracy in general.
Exactly, I agree.
Well, now, again, in keeping with remembering the fact that this marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, are there other forms of civic engagement that you both feel are important to promote, in addition to or besides simply voting?
Well, yeah, I think you should, survey your own skills and talents and figure out where you can get plugged in to the right job or the right movement to keep things going. The city of Pasadena, which is the only one that I'm really that familiar with, but we're constantly crying for people to become city commissioners, whether it's on the planning commission or the women's rights, the women's issues commission, or whatever it is. We always look for citizen involvement at that level. And so I think that as we move forward, people need to really think about, instead of just sitting around watching TV and complaining about it, which is really a lot of fun, but not terribly productive, perhaps. So instead of just doing that, how can you use the talents that you have, the network that you have, the time and energy that you have to further a cause that you feel strongly about? And I will guarantee you there is some commission that's taking a look at that issue as we speak.
Yeah.
So start there and move up.
I think you're onto something, asking whether voting is it. And it's actually just the first step. Because what happens is that you need to make sure that the people that you send into office are actually working on the business of advancing your cause. Or you need to fight whatever it is. If you lost, you voted for the other person or the other ballot measure or something. This is where civic activism comes into play, because there's still a lot of things. Women do not get paid the same amount for the same job. There's a lot of work to be done there. We still have a lot of issues related to fighting for healthcare and childcare, and there are a lot of reasons why women need to continue to get involved, but then all citizens, because everything that impacts women, we're only half of the population, right? It impacts everyone. It impacts your sons, your husband, your cousin, your everybody, your community equally. And so I think that all of those aspects, healthcare, funding for schools. Right now, we're fighting on Proposition 15 to try to get that hurdle in because of the schools. That's where you're going to send your children. So you really need to take a look at all those other public policy issues. I think Jan mentioned something about getting onto commissions, and it could be daunting, but the first step is to, you have a cable channel perhaps where you can listen to the city council issues and find out what it is that you're concerned about. And it just starts there. It's that simple. And, motivating people to actually realize how much impact they can have just by writing a letter, by sending a tweet, by doing whatever they can, because not everybody has time to put in, right? We recognize that. So all you have to do is your part. I think that's all we ask. Just do your part and what you can. It all goes into the drops that make up the ocean.
Well, our discussion this evening has been really, really interesting, and it's amazing how quickly the time is going by. We are coming closer to the end of our program. And with that in mind, I wanted to take a few moments right now to make sure we get out any information, websites that people can go to if they'd like to get more information or get involved with regards to helping women get out the vote, the upcoming election. Certainly, I'm certain that there are websites for the League of Women Voters, and I was hoping that you might give out a little bit of that information.
Oh, definitely.
Martha, that's you.
That's me. You see my QR code that takes you to our website. And what we've done for the first time this year is we're trying to get you not, a single click to what you need, but maybe a 2-click move, because we understand that sometimes the state website and the LA County website are rich and full of information, but a lot of times you don't have time to click on every option that they give you and kind of read everything. So what we've done is a little bit of a shortcut. We're focusing right now on the things that you can do, which is to register to vote, to make sure you check your voter registration, to make sure everything's on the up and up, that it's reflecting the appropriate address, to re-register if you changed your name, you moved, all of those things. People are in transition right now. So when you go to our website, you can just read, okay, I want to register to vote. And then you click and it goes directly to the page for you to register to vote. If you want to save a tree, for example, and you want to get your electronic sample ballot emailed to you, so you don't have to wait or put that burden on the post office, or again, save a tree. 5.5 million registered voters, that's a lot of trees to print out sample ballots. So if you're interested in the environment and things like that, so we have that single click. Go ahead right now, ask them to send you a sample ballot. Further on down, as soon as all of the voting information and the voter guides are available, we will have more clicks for you. And as I said, we'll have places for you to sign up to participate or to attend one of our ballot measure explanations, where we'll tell you all 12 ballot measures from the state and explain them in such a way so you can make up your own mind about how you're going to vote. And so that you can go to our website. Here it is. I hope you can see what it is. And ultimately, if you're not getting the information you need, just email us at Voter Services, and we will try to walk you through the process. Although the websites from the state and the county, once you get to the right place, are, you just follow the prompts. But if you need help, we're here.
Martha, just in case they can't read that, could you actually read aloud for them the email address that they can go to?
Yes, it's Voter Services at lwv-pa.org. And that hyphen's very important, or you end up in Pennsylvania. So make sure you put in that hyphen. Okay. Yes. So that is Voter Services, and we will try to field those. We are going to look at setting up additional voter support, but I'm not ready to quite reveal what that is yet. But as soon as we have it, we're going to announce that.
Okay. And Jen, not to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering if you had any additional information or websites that people might want to consider going to, or organizations that people might want to consider getting involved in to help out here.
Well, I think we all think of the League of Women Voters first, because that's sort of the paramount organization, and the LWVPA stands for Pasadena Area. As Martha said, we do encompass 13 other communities. So that's a great resource for people. In addition to that, if you're interested in becoming involved at the city level, keep in touch with your council member. Whatever district you're in, talk to that person and let them know that you're watching and you're paying attention and you'd like to be involved in more ways than that. There is so much information on the internet. In fact, sometimes I think that we're our own worst enemy with that, because as Martha indicated, you can get so covered with information that you can't tell where you are or what you're doing. But I would just encourage people to be aware of the local organizations that support the causes that they're interested in, or that promote the general idea of voting and participating in ways that they can follow as well. There's no shortage of ways for people to get interested and involved, and I just encourage people to do that.
All right.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that we are willing to take volunteers. Of course, we'd love for you to join us, but volunteers to help get out the vote, and we will take that. You can still use that same email, and depending on if you want to get started. We are nonpartisan. We're highly political. We have our positions in terms of what we advocate for. We'll even sue people over it if that's what's needed. But we never mix the two together. Voter rights belong to everyone, and we separate our advocacy from it because we don't want to turn anyone away from the ballot box. Everybody, we will be a better community, a better country, if everybody has their say equally. And so we don't want to put people off because they disagree with us on a particular position. But if you would like to help, please email us.
And the organization is about issues and positions, and not individuals. It's not about candidates at all. So please disabuse yourself of that idea if you think that it's that the League is Democratic or Independent or Republican or Green Party or whatever. It's not. The League is about issues and they never stand behind a particular candidate. So you should just know that.
All right. Well, at the top of the show, I did mention that this was a very special episode, one that would be centering on the women's suffrage movement and its 100th anniversary, and not so much about COVID. But of course, you almost can't avoid it in this current era. And so with that in mind, I did have one last question with the brief time we have left, only a couple of minutes. I was just wondering how COVID affected this celebration, this 100th anniversary. Were there events planned that unfortunately had to be canceled as a result of this?
Oh, yes. There were several things planned. There were rallies and parades and those kinds of things. And we saw straight away that wasn't going to be appropriate. It wasn't going to be efficient, a way for us to really prove our responsibility as citizens. So we had to put all of that aside. But what's come out instead is we're getting a lot of small groups that are participating. The group of women who put together the float that I mentioned early on in the Rose Parade last January is still coming together. They're still celebrating the rights of women. They're still talking about the issue of suffrage and where women have come from and where we have gone and what that looks like. So I think that, like in many other occasions, women have seen the problem. They've seen one avenue or a number of avenues be closed off. Now we're repositioning to get into a different avenue, but get to the same goal.
And I want to bring up something. Although the in-person celebrations are going, we're partnering right now. I just got a little bit of information, and would you believe it? I can't find it, but the city of Pasadena is actually going to celebrate Women's Equity Day, which is August 26th, when the 19th Amendment was enacted actually into law. And that is going to generate, they're going to have the rotunda lit up. They're going to do a lot of activities on that day. So I think you want to be on the lookout for it. We don't have all the details, but that will be announced. It's coming up very soon. And so there is going to be a celebration. We had events that we were projecting out to October, but that's not going to happen anymore. So we're looking for other opportunities to do it all online.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. We'll certainly have to look for that locally in the city of Pasadena. Ladies, I'm sorry we have run out of time this evening, but Miss Jan Sanders and Miss Martha Zavala, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Our pleasure.
A lot of wonderful information. And we want to remind everybody to get out the vote in November. To our viewers at home, if there are topics you would like to see addressed in our discussions, you can email them to us anytime at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org, and we may include them in a future broadcast. This has been Arroyo Live. I'm Joe Carbonetta. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.